And of course, that's using this $100 a day budget that we set for ourselves.
Has the budget worked out accurately?
Oh, no, not even close.
Welcome to the Go Hunt Life Show, hosted by Todd Nevins.
This is Todd Nevins, and I interview people that had seemingly normal lives and careers going, but they pulled the ripcord and blew up their comfort bubbles to hunt down their life that they had always dreamed of living. On the show today are Bob and Fara Grim, originally from Portland, and this conversation is a continuation from one 6 months ago, when they emailed into the show detailing their pending ripcord and how the podcast encouraged them to go nomadic, and we added a pulling the ripcord segment with them at the end of episode number 56. Be sure to go back in the archives and check it out. They were in the process of selling nearly everything they owned and had just quit the 9-to-5 grind and were getting ready to set out on a global adventure. They carefully planned everything and, most importantly, how they were going to pay for it. I absolutely love the money-saving mantra that they adopted into their lives that gave them a gut check every time they were thinking about spending money. That mantra set them up to be temporarily retired in their early 40s and have enough money to travel on while they discover and create their next income streams. Well, here we are, 6 months later, and we catch up to Bob and Fara in Ireland to get the lowdown on what they've discovered so far and what happened to their $100 a day travel budget. My conversation with Bob and Fara Grim starts right after a word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by PrintDirtCheap.com. Jeff Chrisman, the founder of Print Dirt Cheap, started his business the way most companies begin, with grit, determination, and a vision. And now, a decade later, he's built his company into an online printing powerhouse. If I've handed you a business card in the last 4 years, it was printed by Print Dirt Cheap. And the decals all over my laptop, they printed those too. They print and ship over 30 categories of printing products, from business cards and decals to banners, company letterhead, restaurant menus, and a ton of direct mail pieces. And they have just rolled out an entirely new website, ensuring that your online user experience to place an order is simple and fast. And when you place that order, use promo code LifeHunter for $10 off. And Jeff has just launched Success Hackers, which is a global group of tenacious entrepreneurs that share the latest tips, tools, and hacks into growing a business. Check it out at facebook.com/Success Hackers. Bob and Fara, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
What city are you in? And if you were to walk outside, describe what you would see.
So we're currently in a little town called Gorey, Ireland, and right now we're actually a little bit outside of the town. So we're in the countryside, and it is currently about 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. So that's 34, 35 Fahrenheit, or maybe a little bit more than that. But it's overcast. It's not raining right now, but we've had mixtures of snow and rain over the last few days.
Kind of like a normal December, I guess.
It is. It's a little snowier, I guess, than it normally is here.
Well, you two are married. How old are you, and do you have kids?
I'm 41, Bob's 42, and we do not have any children.
And what is your professions? What are your professions and primary ways that you earn a living?
Well, right now, I guess you'd call us retired because we're not really working as of right now. But in our past lives, I was a computer engineer. I'd worked in the tech industry for about 20 years.
I worked in telecommunications. I did project coordination and project management permitting for the construction of cell towers.
I want to get back there. This conversation was motivated actually out of an email that you guys sent me on June 30th at 5:29 a.m. And it was sent into the Go Hunt Life podcast saying, keep the podcasts coming. We move out of our house in a month to go nomadic, and they are a great encouragement. Thanks. That email was so wonderfully timed because that happened to be on the 1-year anniversary from when I first launched the podcast. So this email is embedded in my heart, and thank you for sending it.
You're welcome.
Well, take me back then. Like, what was your life back at the beginning of 2017 leading up to, I guess you were listening to the podcast and it sounds like a lot was going on. So take me back to your lives back then as a computer engineer and in the telecom world.
I had just finished, I quit my job right before Christmas in 2016. So I started off 2017 being retired and waiting for Bob to finish up. So it was a nice transition.
And yeah, I was finishing up working at the job that I was working in. I'd actually stayed on up into the first part of the year, and I essentially my last day was right around the end of January. And so, I was finishing up work at the beginning of January, and then after that, starting to do things to get our trip in order.
So you guys were going through this in 2016. Are you officially retired? You don't have to earn another dime for the rest of your lives?
It's probably not quite that easy.
Okay.
We have enough savings to sustain us for a little while. Whether that's enough to sustain us indefinitely really depends on how much money we spend on this trip. We really would like to, for us, retirement doesn't mean not working anymore. Retirement just meant we're not working the 9-to-5 grind, having to go into a cubicle every day. And so then that's what this trip is all about, is trying to figure out what is that next step for us to do.
The 9-to-5 grind, you were young, 40, 41, 42, when you decided to, we're going to walk from these jobs, and we think we're going to go travel and figure out the next phase of our life. When did that actually start? And have you always been like global travelers?
Well, I'll answer those kind of out of order. So yes, okay. We've always been global travelers. So from the beginning of our marriage, so we've been married a little bit over 12 years. Actually, it's almost 13 years. But for our honeymoon, in my job, I had a 2-month sabbatical that I would get periodically. So like every 7 years or so, I'd be able to take the sabbatical where I was still getting paid, but I was also able to go travel for 2 months straight. And for our honeymoon, we basically went to Europe for most of that 2 months. And that was kind of the beginning of our international travel. And every year, every other year since then, we've gone on at least one, if not multiple, international trips.
This has been building for a long time.
It has been, yeah. We also, at one point in my career, I had the opportunity to go work in Israel. And so we did get to go and live in another culture for almost a year. The difference there was I was still working, so it wasn't quite the same as it is here. But in doing that, we learned to love other cultures and love to not just travel to other cultures and be a tourist, but actually live there.
Yeah, and that was my first experience when we were in Israel. I wasn't able to work due to our visa situation, so I was on a spousal visa that prevented me from working. So I got to experience a little appetizer into what this retirement life would look like.
Farrah, what's the thing that you remember most about your time in Israel?
How cool it was to be in another culture and go to the markets and go to the just around town and the coffee shops and the various different places out at the beach and stuff, and being able to integrate myself with the culture and to interact and carry on my life, whether it was grocery shopping or getting stuff for the house, doing laundry and everything in a foreign country. It was very different than the vacation mentality.
Yeah, for sure. When you live there, it's a whole different thing. So leading up to summer of 2017, what did you own and what did you have to get rid of to make this trip and lifestyle long-term decision a reality? What'd you have to sell?
We sold both of our cars and we rented out our house. There was a property that I had inherited and we had sold that also.
Was there anything that was particularly difficult? You still own your house, so you've got some rental income coming in, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. We do.
And we're renting it furnished, so we didn't have to get rid of all of our furniture. We pared it down to the bare minimums, but we still have like a bedroom set and a television and kitchen supplies and things like that are there that our renters are using.
Okay, that makes it much easier. Were you following, certainly there are a lot of people that are traveling full-time, travel bloggers and people all over Instagram. Were there people that you were following and that they were mentoring you to help you with this transition?
I had several mentors. I had a harder time when we started to explore if we could transition into this kind of life. We'd always planned and handled our savings in a manner that we could retire early, but retiring early was not in our 40s. So I was struggling at work, and part of that was the last sabbatical that we had came back from, or we had left on sabbatical, and I didn't work for the same firm that Bob did, so I didn't have these sabbaticals every 7 years or so. And so I continually would let my employer know, hey, this is coming up and my husband has a sabbatical. I'd love to stay on, but if you can't hold my position, I completely understand. And in the last sabbatical that we took, I had full projects before I left and advised them, hey, do you want me to clear out my cubicle or do I have a place to come back to? And they had said, yes, they did have a place for me to come back to. But when I came back, the work had dried up so that I didn't have projects to work on, or I didn't have the same quantity of projects. So I did a lot of searching and a lot of different projects where I availed myself at work. And I would sit at work and listen to podcasts to keep myself going and reminding myself that there was an option and there was a higher goal that we were seeking to meet. I listened to and was involved with Eden at Really Truly Living and Nomatopia by Amy and Living Unconventionally with Brittany Felix.
Those are the ones. All right. When I had you on the show, a snippet at the end of an earlier episode in June/July of this year, you said something that I have thought about a lot: the $100 a day travel mantra that helped you guys save money. Would you please explain that again?
Okay, well, so in us trying to come up with a budget for this trip, I didn't really pull the number out of thin air, but looking at what other people have been able to do, $100 a day seemed like a very doable amount of money to travel on, given a bunch of budget constraints, of course. In doing this, it allowed us to look at expenditures that we had, be it our cable bill or a new outfit or going out to dinner, and being able to equate that to how many days of travel that would actually cost us. And so in doing that, it would help to curtail some of those unnecessary expenditures by really understanding what that was going to cost us.
It's such a constant reminder, but in a positive way. Did you feel like you were giving something up? It seems like you twisted it around to where, like, no, this is a bigger picture thing. This is the right decision at this time.
I think it's a little of both. I mean, you realize what you're giving up, but you're getting something in return, and in doing that, it makes it more tangible.
Leading up to when you guys got on the plane and left, you were living up in Portland, correct?
Yeah, we left Portland at the end of July. And we actually spent a few weeks in Los Angeles to go to, visit some family. There was a family wedding that we had to go to, and also visit some last-minute friends that we hadn't seen. And we actually left the U.S. from LAX.
All right. And you also are blogging and on Facebook at Can Do Latitude, but you reserved the URL Can Do Latitude back in June of 2016. So you guys were planning on this a long time, and so you pull the ripcord, and where did you fly to first out of LA?
We flew to Stockholm, Sweden.
Why did you choose Stockholm, Sweden?
It was the cheapest place that we could find in Europe at that point in time.
Cheapest ticket.
Cheapest ticket.
Yeah.
Not the cheapest place, but the cheapest ticket that I could find.
That was it. Like, we're going to go somewhere, but here's the cheapest ticket. I guess we're going to start there.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Did you have like Airbnb? Were you going to house sit? What was your plan? $100 a day goes pretty quickly when you're having to pay for lodging. What was your game plan?
Well, so the game plan was to predominantly use house sitting, or we were also looking into HelpX or Workaway, which are similar to house sitting. It's just that you're not necessarily watching pets. You might be working on somebody's farm or helping somebody remodel part of their house or their business or whatnot. That was the intended goal, and then filling in the gaps with Airbnb. It didn't work out that way at first, so we did, predominantly use Airbnb for the first 3 months or so, 4 months.
How far into that first 3 or 4 months? In your previous travels, you were on a sabbatical, so you always had an end date, and you knew you were going to come back to your home. How far into this trip was it like, no, this is our life now. We don't have anything to go back to?
Honestly, I think that was the mindset from the very beginning. We knew that we were going to go travel for as long as we possibly could. We don't really have an end date specifically in mind, but we originally were budgeting for somewhere between 2 and 3 years. And of course, that's using this $100 a day budget that we set for ourselves.
Has the budget worked out accurately?
Oh, no, not even close. We're above budget. We're not so far above budget right now that we can't pull ourselves back into it. I mean, we're probably sitting at closer to $150 a day at this point. Our next plans, like in the future, like next 6 months or so, is to quickly get ourselves over to Eastern Europe, where the daily amount of money it's going to take should be much less.
Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Click Placement, a digital agency designing Google AdWords and pay-per-click marketing strategies for startups, small businesses, and even people building a side hustle. Hit up clickplacement.com to start a conversation. If you would like to personally support the Go Hunt Life podcast, go to patreon.com/Go Hunt Life to make a donation.
Okay, so what's thrown it out of whack the most, other than is it just a higher cost of living there, or are you guys doing something else to throw the budget out of whack?
For the most part, it's the higher cost of living, and the fact that we haven't been doing house sitting as much as we originally had intended. In fact, right now we're on our very first house sit. So one of the things that we found in Scandinavia was that Scandinavia is very expensive. We knew that ahead of time. We just didn't really know how expensive it would be. For example, in Norway, in Oslo, we found it really hard to even have lunch, in the city for less than $20 to $30 per person.
Whoa.
Yes, that was a shock to us.
And that's a sandwich or a salad or nothing elaborate.
Oh my gosh. How many countries have you been to so far?
Let's see, we counted up and we're at 7 right now.
7 so far. This is your first house sit. We've had a number of guests on the podcast that are professional house sitters, and they go all over the world and they only house sit. Why is this just your first one? Did things just not work out, or what?
We continually told friends to come over and that we would meet up with them. So while it's been wonderful to meet up with our friends, we knew that we needed to be in certain countries at certain times to meet up with our friends. So we were trying to fit house sits into our schedule, which did not work. We've determined that in order to do the house sitting, we need to schedule the house sit and then let our friends know where we're going to be, and that we can meet up with them accordingly in that fashion.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the important thing that we came to the realization of is that house sitting is not on our schedule; it's on the client's schedule essentially. And in doing that, you have to be willing to schedule yourself out much further in advance.
Yeah, that's consistent with what my other guests have said as well. What's the longest place that you've stayed consecutive nights?
Well, we've had two stays in different locations for about a month, plus or minus a few days.
So far, what's been your favorite city?
For me, my favorite city would actually be Bergen, Norway, because it's on the west coast of Norway in the fjords. It's very mountainous. Well, it's at the base of the mountains on the fjords. And to me, it's a beautiful area that I would love to spend more time in. It's just going to take some planning to figure out how to do that a little cheaper than we had the first time.
And when are you heading to Eastern Europe?
Probably
sometime in the spring.
Yeah, late spring, so probably March, April timeframe.
All right. So after 4 or 5 months on the road, are you just in backpacks?
I have a rather large rolling e-bag suitcase. And then I have a Osprey carry-on backpack. Yeah,
and I have a carrying duffel that actually can turn into a backpack, although it's not the most comfortable backpack. And then another carry-on size bag.
What's been the biggest lesson as far as the gear that you packed versus what you really needed?
The way I would put it is figure out what you need and then cut it in half, because that's essentially what I've done at this point.
In half?
Yeah, I thought I was packing light, and I really wasn't packing as light as I thought I was.
For me, it was I had went through my clothes pretty extensively, trying to do capsule wardrobes and things that, outfits that would match color-wise and scheme and everything, that I could wear them multiple times with a little variety. But I didn't plan for hanging them up. And in most of Europe that we've found so far, they don't have dryers, and they line dry or hang dry all of their clothes. So there are some pieces of clothing that I took with me that just take forever to dry in that fashion.
What about your the tools that you're using along the way? What online travel tools are you using, and what tools, like you and I, we're talking on Skype. How do you stay connected back with friends back in the United States?
I use a lot of just the messaging networks, WhatsApp and Viber and iMessage and Google Hangouts to keep and Facebook Messenger to keep in contact with my friends and family.
And what about your planning and travel tools as far as like planes and transportation and trains?
We're using Google Maps a lot for planning routes, at least. We're actually currently short-term leasing a car, so we're driving around a lot with that. But we also found out how useful Google Maps can be when you're in a city. So, like when we were in London, using it to be able to get around on public transportation was very, very simple.
What motivated you to rent a car?
Actually, doing the house sitting, a lot of times they're not offering a car, and if we're out in the country, you have to have a car. So
we also knew that we were headed to the UK and Ireland, and we knew that we would be in London and Dublin, but we also wanted to get out into the Cotswolds and other, seaside towns and things that were not going to be as easy to do with public transportation.
Is it as expensive as in the United States? Is it comparable as far as cost?
Actually, the car itself isn't too bad. We're using a program from France where you get to rent a French car very cheaply. I mean, it's in the neighborhood of $20 to $30, maybe $40 a day, and that includes full insurance and everything.
That's cheap.
Yeah, fuel is actually pretty expensive, but that was something that we knew about ahead of time. I would say fuel's probably about double what it is in the U.S.
And the vehicle that we've rented is it's a small SUV. So, I mean, it would be comparable to a CRV, a Honda CRV back in the States. So it's not a small car.
One of the things that you mentioned in our conversation this past summer, Farrah, I think you said it, is that you are embarking on this trip to find yourselves and to relay that into your next careers and income stream. Has that come to fruition yet as far as your next phase of income stream?
I feel that we're both using this amount of time to explore things that we have an interest in. I have crocheted, and right before I left Portland, I learned how to knit. And my philosophy in doing that would be wherever we travel, I might be able to find women that did that sort of needlecraft fiber work. And so I've been going to different knitting shops and uniting with the people in the local areas as we've been traveling doing that. Bob has been doing a lot of photography, and so we're still trying to find it, but we've been having fun exploring.
As far as knitting, would you be teaching other people how to do that, or would you be selling your products?
I might be doing one or both.
How quickly do you guys have to figure that out before you start getting nervous about running through savings?
I would say that probably within the next year to year and a half, we need to have it figured out. Otherwise, it's gonna turn into something where we really are going to have an end date and have to go back to some sort of reality, but not necessarily the same cubicle jobs we had before.
Have you run into other, I guess you're considered expats, travelers, people like yourselves that have chosen this different path and they're making money while traveling? Have you run into those people yet?
Not really. I mean, we have run into a lot of expats, but most of them are, more of a retirement age than we are, and so that's what they're doing a lot of traveling just in their retirement years. And we do know a lot of people that are over here from the U.S. that are working here, but they're not necessarily nomadic.
So they're working online and staying in one place, or they actually have jobs that they go to over there?
They actually have jobs.
What are their options for Americans to go over there and actually work at a job from a visa and work visa perspective?
Oh, that's a really complex question. Most of the time, I would say that you have to have a job with a company that is willing to sponsor you in one way to get a work visa. It's very difficult to come here on a tourist visa and then get a job through that. Although I do have a good friend from college that's how he got his job in Denmark. So it's possible. But then there's also many other options as far as in Germany. There's some special visa for people that are doing some sort of artistic endeavor, which artistic is kind of loosely defined, where you can get a 1-year visa just working on your own.
What about being a computer engineer but being a remote worker for a company?
That's always a possibility.
Okay, yeah, because certainly things are changing where more and more companies are open to having employees work remotely, or you could certainly do contract work through a number of different sites. So, but right. I mean, Fara mentioned though you're exploring photography. Is that really what you want to do? Right
now, yes, it is. It's something that, in today's age, being a full-time photographer is not easy. And in fact, I right now I'm basically just, taking my own travel photos and trying to sell them through stock websites.
Yeah. How does that work? And are you able to make money that way?
So the answer is yes, you can make money that way. It's not going to be a windfall, but I follow quite a few people online that do something similar to this, and they seem to make some amount of extra spending money. So at the very least, it would be something that would help prolong our travels.
And it's residual. You put it up one time, or you put up 100 images one time, and then do you get paid? I'm assuming the different websites pay differently, but are you paid indefinitely?
Yes. Well, indefinitely as long as people are downloading your content.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. What are you focused on in the next 6 months? You mentioned Eastern Europe. What else?
We're going to focus a lot more on house sits. We're already lining up a few house sits for the next month and a half, and trying to do that more because obviously if you're not paying for your lodging, then that's a fair amount of that budget that we're trying to stay under.
What's been the number one lesson or thing that you wish you had a do-over on so far?
Focusing more on the house sitting earlier on, and then that would have not caused us to run into any kind of budget crunch.
Maybe if we had done house sitting in the U.S. before we left, or had done it before we quit our jobs, so that we would have the profiles already built and already reviews and recommendations and stuff, so that we're a known entity in the house sitting world.
Has that been a hindrance that you're getting started as you really, really need it?
I have no way of knowing if they are not selecting us because we don't have a lot of the reviews and the profiles that other people do.
Yeah. I think to go along with that, it's if we knew better how it all worked before we came over here, we probably would have been more well equipped to do it out here on the road.
If you were to go back and give yourself, let's go way back when you registered the candolatitude.com URL, June of 2016. If you could go back and have like 1 minute conversation with yourselves, what piece of advice would you give yourselves?
I think just to trust in this dream that we have, and to know that things that you want in your life aren't easy. And often, whether it be, launching into a nomadic career or just doing the daily grind, that it's difficult at times. And so that doesn't mean that you should give up or that you've made a bad selection, that you can do what you set your mind to doing.
For me, it's planning. It's great to fly up by the seat of your pants and do all of this last minute, figuring out where you're going to go and where you're going to stay. But when you want to stay places longer term, to me, it seems like the planning has to happen first. You can't do that by just showing up somewhere and hoping to find some place to stay for a month.
All right, you can find Bob and Fara at candolatitude.com and on Facebook at candolatitude.com. You can follow all of their travels. All right, Bob and Fara, thank you very much for jumping on the show today.
Thank you, Todd.
Don't forget to hit up the online printing rock stars at printdirtcheap.com and use promo code LifeHunter for $10 off. Hey, Life Hunters, thank you for listening to this episode of Go Hunt Life. If you like the show and would like to support it, go to iTunes and do this. Subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and review it. It helps. And thank you. If you or someone that you know has quit their normal life to follow their dreams, I would love an introduction and maybe interview them on the show. You can find me at gohuntlife.com and also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at Go Hunt Life. Until next time, stay weird, dare greatly, and ripcord out.